A stranger. Obinna, I worked 3 jobs so you could become the man standing there pretending not to know me.
Amara, I never... Obinna, who is she?
I don't know her.
Besties, this woman worked 3 jobs for his exams. Even sleep barely knew her address.
Besties, this woman fried akara before sunrise, delivered goods all afternoon, and cleaned guest rooms at night just to pay his exam fees. Even sleep barely knew her address. Yet there stood Obinna beside a wealthy chief's daughter, dressed as if success itself had personally ironed his agbada. Then he looked at the woman who had financed his dream and calmly said, "I don't know her." Amara fell silent. Would you forgive him or remember those words forever? Before the son even remembered that it had a job to do, Amara Adeyemi was already standing over a pan of sizzling oil at the corner of Akinyele Market, scooping akara batter with her left hand and giving change with her right to a woman bargaining over 50 naira, as though Nigeria's entire economy would collapse if she paid the full price. "Amara, you really expect me to pay 650 naira? The woman demanded, one hand planted firmly on her hip. Tonti Kemi, it was the same price yesterday. Yesterday was yesterday. Mama BC, who was arranging bags of pap behind them, slowly raised her head. This woman has been arguing for 7 minutes over 50 naira. If she ever enters politics, we are finished. Amara pressed her lips together to keep from laughing. Auntie Kemi glared at Mama BC. Then she paid the full amount anyway. Mornings at Akinyele Market were like that. People came to buy breakfast, negotiate the price of tomatoes, investigate other people's marriages, and sometimes accomplish all 3 within the same conversation. The information moved through the market so quickly that Mama BC had given the invisible system its own name. Market News Network. No office, no employees, no salaries, Mama BC often said. But if somebody's husband comes home late, the whole market knows before his wife does. The Amara had started frying akara. By the time the first rush of customers began to disappear, the blue scarf around her hair smelled of cooking oil. Her eyes stung from the smoke and the soles of her feet had already begun to ache. And that was only job number 1. Amara counted the morning's money, wiped her hands, and pulled an old blue notebook from her bag. She recorded every amount in neat handwriting. Akara 1,750 naira, pap 3,200, charcoal and cooking oil minus 4,100. She circled what remained. Her Mama BC leaned over her shoulder. "One day, you will start counting the individual grains of rice inside your pot. The rice is expensive, Mama. See, you have already considered it." Amara smiled and closed the notebook. Then she checked her phone. A message from Obinna was waiting, still studying. "Exam registration closes tomorrow." Her smile faded slightly. She knew. In fact, she knew exactly how much he was still short. 63,450 naira. That amount was almost equal to the money Amara had spent 3 months saving toward the deposit on a second-hand industrial sewing machine she had seen at a shop near Mokola. She had walked past that machine 6 times, slowing down every single time. One day she wanted a little place of her own. Nothing extravagant, just enough room for a sewing machine, a cutting table, colorful fabrics, and a small sign carrying her name. But Obinna's dream had a deadline tomorrow. Amara's dream, as usual, could wait. By midday, she had exchanged her oil-stained apron for a pale yellow shirt and gone to Mama BC's grocery stall to collect deliveries. The 2 crates of bottled water, 3 bags of rice, and a carton of spices were loaded onto a delivery motorcycle. "Be careful with Mrs. Alad," Mama BC warned. "She ordered 3 bags, but when you arrive, she will remember ordering only 2. "How do you know?" Mama BC stared at her as though deeply offended. "Amara, I do not gossip." She paused. "I verify information through social methods." Amara laughed out loud for the first time that day. By afternoon, she had completed 7 deliveries, climbed more staircases than she cared to count, and accepted 2 additional orders that had not been on the original schedule. One customer gave her an extra tip because Amara returned with a forgotten bag of sugar. "You have an excellent memory," the woman said. Amara only smiled. She did not explain that when every naira mattered, people tended to remember things very well. That evening, Amara arrived at Adrin Guest House, a small but elegant property near Bodiya, for her 3rd job. She changed bed sheets, scrubbed bathrooms, folded towels, prepared rooms for the next morning's guests. Near the end of her shift, Amara sat on the edge of a chair inside the laundry room. Just for 2 minutes, only 2. Her eyelids felt so heavy that her body seemed ready to fall asleep before her mind had officially approved the decision. Her phone vibrated. Obinna. Amara? I'm here, I'm sorry. Something in his voice woke her immediately. What happened? I calculated everything again. I'm still short on the registration fee. If I don't pay tomorrow, he did not finish. He did not need to. Amara looked at her hands. One fingertip carried a small burn from the akara pan that morning. Her other wrist was red from lifting crates of bottled water. How long have you been studying for this? She asked. Almost 2 years. Then you're taking that exam. Amara, you're taking it. Obinna. Silence. I don't know how I'll ever repay you. She gave a tired little smile. Pass first. We can discuss your debt afterward. Later, outside Obinna's rented room, he held both her hands tightly. I will never forget this. You've said that before. I mean it. Obinna looked directly into her eyes. One day, when I have a good job and a proper house, you won't have to work 3 jobs anymore. Amara said nothing. He squeezed her hands. You'll be my only wife. Something inside her softened. A little later, Obinna returned to his books. Amara sat alone on the step outside his room, opened her banking app, and transferred 63,450 naira. The remaining balance made her stare at the screen twice. But the transaction was complete. She pulled out the blue notebook. Under a section labeled Future, there was a line she had written 3 months earlier, Industrial Sewing Machine Deposit. Amara stared at those words for a long time. Then she drew a line through them. Beside it, she wrote, Obinna Exam Registration. She closed the notebook. At that moment, Amara believed she had just invested in a future that belonged to both of them. She had no idea that one day the same little blue notebook would force her to ask a very different question. Where, exactly, was her own future? 3 weeks after Amara transferred the exam registration fee, Obinna began living as though the entire world had turned into one enormous examination hall, and anyone who spoke to him for too long could personally be blamed if he failed. He studied at the little wooden table beside his window, studied while eating, studied on the bus, and sometimes even brought his books along when he came to see Amara. Once, she placed a plate of jollof rice in front of him, turned away to get some water, and came back to find him using his spoon to stop the pages of his book from flipping in the breeze. Obinna, are you planning to eat? Yes. Then why is your food doing the job of a paperweight? He looked at the spoon, then at her. I'm optimizing my time. Amara laughed. If you pass this exam, I'm sending that spoon a thank you letter. The moments like that made all her exhaustion feel worthwhile. Obinna was not yet the cold man she would later meet. He still visited the market on mornings when he had no study sessions, still helped her lift heavy containers of cooking oil, and still knew how to make Amara laugh when she was too tired to talk. Some days, he sat behind the akara stall with a book in one hand while handing food to customers with the other. Mama BC watched him for a long moment one morning. Obinna, he looked up. Yes, Mama, you are studying this hard because you want to become an important man, correct? I hope so. Good, she pointed at the bag of akara he had just tied. But before becoming an important man, learn how to tie a plastic bag. The sauce is running onto the customer's foot. The customer looked down. Obinna hurriedly apologized. Amara laughed so hard she had to turn toward the frying pan. The Mama BC did not laugh. She never wasted an educational opportunity. Back then, Amara still believed she and Obinna were walking toward the same future. The only difference was that she walked toward it on aching feet after 3 jobs, while he walked toward it through textbooks and expectations they had built together. Every evening, she asked how much she had studied. He asked whether she had eaten. Sometimes both answers were lies. Obinna said he was fine, even when his eyes were red from studying late into the night. Amara said she had eaten even when dinner was nothing more than 2 leftover akara and a cup of cold pap. They were both sacrificing. Amara's sacrifices simply cost a little more. One afternoon, Obinna appeared outside Adarin guest house just as Amara finished her shift. He wore the white shirt she had bought him for his birthday the previous year and carried a stack of photocopied papers almost thick enough to qualify as furniture. What are you doing here? She asked. I came to pick you up. Amara looked toward the hired motorcycle parked outside. With what? Obinna grinned. With the luxury transportation waiting over there. The motorcycle with one side mirror. Please don't insult another man's property. They decided to walk instead because Amara said it would save money. On the way, Obinna told her about the exam. Candidates were coming from Lagos, Abuja, and larger cities. Some had better qualifications. Others came from families that could afford every preparation course available without having to sell a single extra akara. Then he went quiet. Amara, yes, what if I don't pass? She stopped walking. Obinna rarely said things like that. Fear was something he usually hid behind ambition. Amara looked at him, then pointed toward the thick stack of papers in his hand. You've been studying for almost 2 years. But I'm not saying you're guaranteed to come first. I'm saying you'll walk into that room and do the best you can. Obinna looked at her. You always believe in me, someone has to. He smiled but said nothing. Then he took her hand. It was a small moment. No music, no grand promises. Just 2 young adults standing beside a dusty road trying to believe that the future would be kind to them if they worked hard enough. And for a while, it almost was. But the first change came quietly, so quietly that Amara almost ignored it. A week before the exam, Obinna was invited to a study session at a training center in Bodia. Most of the participants were well-connected candidates, some already working for respected companies. Obinna called Amara because he had forgotten an important folder in his room. She brought it after finishing her delivery shift. There was a faint stain on her shirt from a torn spice packet. Her hair was tied back with the familiar blue scarf, and she still carried her delivery bag. When Amara entered the hallway, Obinna was standing with 3 men and a stylish young woman. He saw her. For 1 second, something changed in his face. Not much, but enough. Obinna, Amara called. He quickly walked toward her. You came, you forgot these. She handed him the folder. One of the men behind him glanced over. Your sister? Amara waited. Obinna also paused, just 1 beat. But sometimes 1 second is long enough for a woman to hear what a man has not yet said. Obinna smiled. No, she's a family friend. Amara looked at him. He avoided her eyes. She just helped me bring some documents. The man nodded and returned to the conversation. Amara remained where she was. Family friend? She asked quietly. Obinna immediately guided her a few steps away. Don't make this into something here. I haven't done anything. I just don't want to explain my personal life to everyone. You could say I'm your girlfriend. Amara, his voice softened. These people have connections. I'm just trying to keep things professional. She looked down at herself. The spice stain, the delivery bag, the flat shoes worn thin at the heels. Then she looked at Obinna. Clean white shirt, polished black shoes. A new world was beginning to open in front of him. Amara understood what he meant. At least she thought she did. Fine, she said. Obinna exhaled as though he had narrowly escaped an argument. He kissed her lightly on the forehead. After the exam, everything will be different. That was something he often said. After the exam, after the job, after there was money, after things became stable, their love always seemed to live just beyond the door labeled later. Amara returned to the market. Mama Bisi needed only 1 look at her face. She put down the basket of onions she was sorting. What did Scholar Obinna do? How do you know this is about Obinna? Amara, you walked in here wearing the face of a woman who heard something she didn't like and is now trying to convince herself that it was reasonable. She shrugged. I have eyes. Amara told her what had happened. Mama Bisi went silent for several seconds. That was so unusual that Amara almost became concerned. Finally, she asked, he called you a family friend. It was only because those people were in his professional circle. Mama, don't start. I haven't started anything. She went back to slicing onions. I am merely considering a scientific phenomenon. What phenomenon? It appears that some men experience memory loss the closer they get to success. Amara laughed despite herself. Mama, I said some. Do not misquote me. 2 days later, Obinna walked into the examination hall. Amara could not go with him because she had to work. She kept her phone in her pocket all day but checked it so many times that Mama Bisi finally took it away. Looking at the screen again will not make his results appear faster. I was checking the time. For the 17th time, Mama Bisi slipped the phone into her own apron pocket. It belongs to the government now. Near the end of the day, Obinna called. I did it. Amara closed her eyes. You're sure? I don't know the result yet, but I did well. She smiled. For that moment, all the little doubts inside her disappeared. Family friend, professional, connections, none of it mattered. 3 weeks later, Market News Network did what Market News Network did best. It delivered the news before the person involved could. Mama Bisi was weighing beans when a woman hurried toward the stall. Bisi, have you heard? Mama Bisi did not look up. If this is about your husband, I don't want to know. It isn't about my husband. Mama Bisi immediately raised her head. They then continue. The woman grinned. The exam results are out. Amara's young man came first in the region. The spoon in Amara's hand fell onto the tray. What? At that exact moment, her phone vibrated. Obinna. Amara answered with trembling fingers. He said nothing at first. But then she heard him laugh. Amara, you passed. Not just passed. He took a breath. I came first. The Amara covered her mouth with one hand. The market began celebrating before she could say another word. Mama Bisi clapped. Auntie Kemi, the same woman who had once fought for 7 minutes over 50 naira, hugged Amara as though she had personally funded Obinna's education. For a few brief minutes, Amara forgot about family friend. She forgot about the sewing machine crossed out in her blue notebook. She thought only about Obinna. He had done it, they had done it. At least that was what Amara believed. Because the following morning, Obinna received another call. An invitation to a private reception honoring the region's highest performing candidates. And the man hosting that reception was Chief Balogun. The Amara did not know that name yet. But before long, everyone at Market News Network would. And this time, the news would not make her laugh. The news of Obinna's top exam result did not take long to travel through Akinyele Market. In fact, if you asked Mama Bisi, she would insist the official announcement was merely an administrative formality, because Market News Network had already completed distribution before half the traders had even opened WhatsApp. By 10 a.m., 3 people had congratulated Amara, 2 had asked when she was getting married, and Auntie Kemi, the same woman who once fought heroically over 50 naira worth of akara, had already begun advising her on how many guests she should invite. Don't make the wedding too big, Auntie Kemi said. People will eat and leave. Nobody remember anything. Mama Bisi, who was tying bundles of vegetables nearby, slowly raised her head. You're saying that after eating 4 plates at my daughter's wedding? 3-4 Bisi, were you counting what your guest is ate? I wasn't counting. Mama Bisi calmly put down the vegetables. I was preserving data. Amara burst out laughing. The days that followed were perhaps the happiest she had experienced in months. Whenever she looked at Obinna, she no longer saw only the man bent over old study materials beneath a flickering light. She saw a door finally opening. And in Amara's mind, they would walk through it together. Obinna changed too. At first, the changes were good ones. He slept more. He laughed more. With the first money he earned helping a group of candidates prepare for next year's examination, he bought Amara a new pair of sandals. You should have saved the money, she said. You've bought enough things for me. You never bought me sandals. Exactly, which is why I had to address the problem personally. Amara laughed and tried them on in front of him. They were slightly too big. She wore them anyway. Some relationships live inside small moments like that, and that was precisely why what came later would hurt her so deeply. If Obinna had always been cruel, Amara could have hated him much more easily. But he had once been kind. At least he had once known how to be. A few days later, Obinna received an invitation to a reception honoring the region's highest performing candidates. The event was organized by Balogun Development Council, a private education and commerce foundation, at an upscale event center in Bodia. The name at the bottom of the invitation was Chief Balogun. Amara read it twice. A chief? Obinna nodded, trying to look casual even though the corners of his mouth had already betrayed him. He runs several businesses in hospitality and logistics. So you're going? I think I should. You think? The Amara put down the invitation. Obinna, I've seen you wear a proper shirt just to buy bread. Don't pretend you don't want to go. He laughed. I just don't want to look too eager. You're holding the invitation with both hands. Obinna immediately placed it on the table. The Amara laughed even harder. The evening before the event, she helped him choose his clothes. Obinna's finest cream agbada had been bought long ago for a family wedding and worn only twice. The Amara carefully ironed every crease. Obinna stood in front of the small mirror. Is this too much? You're meeting a chief, not buying onions. The chiefs buy onions too. Not dressed like that. He laughed. Amara stood behind him and adjusted his collar. In the mirror, they almost looked like a couple who had already survived the hardest part of their journey. She did not yet know that sometimes success does not change a person immediately. It simply places them inside new rooms, then waits to see how quickly they become embarrassed by the old ones. The reception overwhelmed Obinna more than he admitted. Polished floors reflected warm lights from above. Tailored suits moved between elegantly arranged tables. The young professional spoke casually about investments, fellowships, contracts, and opportunities Obinna had previously encountered only online. Nobody asked whether he had once struggled to afford textbooks. Nobody knew Amara had transferred 63,450 naira at the last minute so he could sit for the examination. Inside that room, he was simply Obinna Nwosu, top-performing candidate. He liked the feeling. Chief Balogun met him as part of a small group. The older man spoke quietly, yet somehow made people straighten their posture whenever he approached. "The excellent result," Chief Balogun said. "Thank you, sir. Results open doors. Character decides how long you remain inside." Obinna nodded. He had no idea how important those words would eventually become. Standing beside Chief Balogun was his daughter, Adana Balogun. She wore an elegant dark blue dress and carried herself nothing like a wealthy daughter who existed only in her father's shadow. Adana helped oversee part of the family's business development program, and instead of merely congratulating Obinna, she asked him specific questions about his plans. "What do you intend to do with this result?" Obinna looked slightly surprised. "You actually want to know my plan?" Adana raised an eyebrow. "If I only wanted to praise you, I would have said congratulations and walked away." Obinna laughed. They spoke for nearly 20 minutes. About work, about logistics, about opportunities in Lagos, about how talented people without the right networks could spend years trying to enter the right rooms. That last phrase caught Obinna's attention, the right rooms. Later that night, he called Amara much later than usual. "How was it?" she asked immediately. Different. Different how? Obinna lay on his bed, staring at the business card Adana had given him. "I don't know, people. They were talking about things I never thought I could reach." "Like what?" "Jobs in Lagos. Consulting. International training programs. Connections." Amara smiled. "That's good." "Yeah, I told you." "Told me what?" "You just needed to walk into the right room." Obinna went quiet. He had heard those same words somewhere else that evening. But he did not tell her. Over the following weeks, Obinna's schedule began filling up. A meeting, a networking event, a lunch with former candidates, an invitation to a workshop. Amara was genuinely happy for him. She still fried akara, made deliveries, and worked at the guest house. Obinna began wearing dress shirts more often, carrying a new document case, and spending more time in Bodija. The distance between their lives was not yet large enough to name. But it had appeared. One afternoon, Obinna stopped by the market after a meeting. Amara had just lifted a fresh batch of akara from the oil. "You want some?" Obinna looked around. 2 people from the Balogun program were standing across the road. "No, I already ate." "You never refuse akara." "I'm not hungry." Amara shrugged. Then she noticed Obinna tug his sleeve down slightly and turn so that his back faced the 2 people across the road. A tiny movement. Maybe it meant nothing. That was what Amara told herself. The 2 acquaintances recognized him and walked over. Obinna, he turned and immediately smiled. They shook hands. One of them glanced at Amara. "You know her?" A simple question. Amara waited. Obinna looked at her just for a beat, but this time Amara recognized that beat. "She's someone I know from around here," he said. Not his girlfriend, not even a family friend anymore. Just someone I know." The man nodded and continued talking. Amara said nothing. She turned back to the frying pan. Obinna waited until the 2 men had walked away before approaching her. "Don't look at me like that." "I'm frying akara, Amara." She turned one piece over. "I'm still frying akara. I just didn't want to explain my personal life in the middle of a professional conversation." "I didn't ask you to." That silenced him. Amara placed the cooked akara into the basket. Obinna sighed. "People are watching me now." She looked up. The sentence was not loud. It was not openly cruel. Obinna probably did not even realize how much it hurt. But Amara heard the part he had not said. "And I don't want them watching me with you." She looked at the elegant agbada he was wearing, the new shoes, and the polished document case. Then she looked at her own apron. "Okay," Amara said. Nothing more. That evening, she opened the blue notebook to record the day's earnings. In the middle of the numbers, her pen stopped. She thought about Obinna's words. "People are watching me now." Then her phone lit up. It was not Obinna. A message had arrived from a woman she knew in Bodija. There was a photograph attached. Obinna was standing at another Balogun family event, smiling beside Adana. There was nothing obviously inappropriate about the distance between them. But beneath the photograph was a question. Amara, isn't this your Obinna? Amara stared at the screen for a long time. Then she looked at the open blue notebook in front of her. For the first time since Obinna passed his exam, the pride inside her had to make room for something else. Not jealousy, not yet, just a deeply uncomfortable realization that the man who once promised to carry her into his future was beginning to build a version of that future in which he mentioned her less and less. There was nothing in the photograph on Amara's phone that she could point to and call betrayal. Obinna stood beside Adana Balogun in front of a wall decorated with white and gold flowers. He wore a dark blue agbada Amara had never seen before. Adana stood at a perfectly respectable distance, one hand holding her phone, the other resting beside a small cream-colored purse. But behind them, several young professionals were talking beneath the warm lights of an event Amara had not even known Obinna would attend. No holding hands, no embrace, nothing secret, and yet Amara stared at the photograph longer than she needed to. She zoomed in, then immediately felt ridiculous and zoomed back out. A moment later, she zoomed in again. Human beings were interesting creatures. The moment the heart became suspicious, 2 fingers on a phone screen suddenly turned into a professional investigation team. The message beneath the photograph was still there. Amara, isn't this your Obinna? She did not reply, at least not yet. The next morning, Amara continued working as usual. She fried akara, counted the money, and recorded every amount in her blue notebook. But she accidentally gave one customer 2 bags of pap instead of 1. The Mama Busy looked at her. Amara looked at the 2 bags. The customer looked at both women. She's in love, Mama Busy explained. The mama, or she's having problems because of love. The symptoms are surprisingly similar. The customer laughed. Amara took 1 bag back and turned toward Mama Busy. I'm completely fine. Of course. Mama Busy nodded solemnly. People who are completely fine usually double their customers' orders for free. That is the foundation of every successful business. Amara was about to argue when her phone vibrated. She looked down too quickly. It was not Obinna, just a message in the family WhatsApp group. She exhaled. Mama Busy noticed. Scholar Obinna? No. Then you are disappointed. I'm not disappointed. Amara, I sell food, not lies. Please don't bring them to my stall. The Amara could not help laughing. But when she turned back to the frying pan, the uncomfortable feeling remained. Obinna had not called her since the previous evening. Once, that would have been unusual. Lately, it was becoming normal. Near the end of the day, he finally sent a message. Busy day. We'll call later. He did not call. The next 2 days were much the same. It was not that Obinna disappeared completely. That might actually have been easier to understand. He still sent good morning messages, still asked whether she had eaten, and occasionally called at the end of the day. The calls were simply getting shorter. The silences were getting longer. And the future he had once described using the word we was beginning to appear with a different pronoun. I might be introduced to a logistics company. I'm thinking about Lagos. I need to build my network. I might join the Balogun program. Amara heard all of it. What she did not hear was, you'll come with me. The one afternoon she finally decided to ask. They met at a small cafe near Bodija. Obinna arrived late, wearing a crisp white shirt and carrying a new phone. Amara glanced at it. New phone? Obinna placed it on the table. Adana introduced me to someone who sells them. I got a discount. The name came out too natural, Amma stirred a drink. Adana? Chief Balogun's daughter. I know who she is. Obinna looked at her. You do? I saw the photograph. A pause. Very short. But Amara was beginning to hate Obinna's pauses. What photograph? The one of you together at the event. He leaned back. Amara, that was a networking event. I didn't say anything, but the way you asked, I only asked. Obinna sighed. She looked at him. Is something happening between you and her? No, this time, he answered immediately. Dana helps coordinate the program. I talked to her because of work. Okay? I asked. You answered. Okay? Obinna stared at her as though he had prepared himself for a much larger argument and was almost irritated that she had refused to provide one. I don't want you becoming insecure just because I'm meeting new people. Amara placed her spoon down. Insecure? I didn't mean it as an insult. But you managed to make it one. I'm only saying my life is changing. The sentence settled between them. Amara looked at the man across the table. Your life? Obinna caught it immediately. You know what I mean. I'm not sure I do anymore. He reached across the table for her hand. Amara did not pull away. But she did not hold his hand either. Amara, everything I'm doing is about building a future. Whose? Obinna frowned. The ours, she nodded. That was the answer she had wanted. Strangely, hearing it no longer reassured her the way it once had. Over the next few days, Obinna made more effort. He called when he said he would. He visited the market once and actually paid for his akara instead of accepting it for free. He even brought Mama Bisi a bag of oranges. Mama Bisi stared at the oranges, then at him. What did you do wrong? Obinna laughed. Can't I bring you fruit? You can. She picked up one orange and examined it carefully. But men rarely arrive carrying gifts without a story following behind them. Mama Bisi, Amara warned. I am only protecting agriculture. Obinna shook his head, laughing. For a brief moment, everything almost felt normal again. Then Market News Network went to work. Nobody knew where the first rumor came from. Someone said a tailor had heard it from a customer. Someone else said a tomato seller had a cousin who worked for the Balogun family. The Mama Bisi declared she was not interested, which meant she probably knew almost the entire story. Auntie Kemi delivered the news. She approached the stall wearing the expression of someone attempting to walk slowly while the information inside her was sprinting. The Amara, Mama Bisi, did not even look up. No, I haven't said anything yet. Your face has already delivered 3 paragraphs. The Auntie Kemi lowered her voice. People are saying Chief Balogun really likes Obinna. Amara continued packing akara. That's good. Not that kind of liking. Her hands stopped. Auntie Kemi glanced around and lowered her voice even further, although everyone nearby had already begun listening with their entire bodies. The people are saying the family is considering Obinna for Adana. Amara laughed. It was short and completely humorless. Obinna said there is nothing between them. I'm only telling you what I heard. Mama Bisi turned toward her. That is the definition of gossip. I'm worried about Amara. Compassionate gossip is still gossip. Auntie Kemi fell silent. Mama Bisi looked at Amara. Do you want me to send her away? No, Amara wiped her hands. I want to ask Obinna. That evening, she called him. He did not answer. She called again. Nothing. An hour later, a message appeared. In a meeting, talk tomorrow. Amara stared at it. She did not reply. The next day, she went to his rented room. The Obinna was not there. His neighbor said he had left early that morning. Amara went home without leaving a message. She hated the feeling that she was chasing a man who had once been the one always coming to find her. 2 days later, Obinna finally appeared. I heard you came looking for me. I heard you're getting married. He closed his eyes for a second. Market gossip. So it isn't true? There is no wedding. Has anyone spoken to you about Adana? This time, he did not answer immediately. Amara felt something cold settle in her stomach. Obinna, Chief Balogun has said a few things. What things? Just talk. About you marrying his daughter. Amara families like theirs say many things. And what did you say? He looked at her. I said it wasn't the right time. Not the right time. Amara heard the difference clearly. You didn't tell them you already had me? Obinna rubbed his forehead. You're making this more difficult than it needs to be. I'm asking a very simple question. I'm standing in front of opportunities that could change my entire life. I know. No, I don't think you understand. That silenced her. Obinna continued, his voice softening but not enough to erase what he had just said. The Chief Balogun can open doors that might take me 10 years to open on my own. So what am I in all of that? Don't turn this into a choice between you and my career. I'm not turning it into anything. Amara looked directly at him. I just want to know whether you're turning me into something you have to hide in order to have that career. Obinna did not answer. This time the silence lasted too long. Amara was the first to walk away. That night she did not cry. She returned to her room, changed her clothes, and opened the blue notebook. The numbers were still there. 63,450 naira for the exam registration. The books, transportation, small amounts she had never considered sacrifices before. She did not add them together. Not yet. Her phone vibrated. Another message from the woman in Bodija. No explanation, just a photograph. Obinna stood beside Chief Balogun and Adana outside the family's large home. All 3 of them were smiling. Obinna wore burgundy traditional attire. Adana was dressed in almost the same shade. This time, Amara did not zoom in. She simply stared. Then a second message appeared. Amara, I think you should ask him what happened at the family dinner. Amara placed the phone beside her open blue notebook. Outside her window, the town remained as noisy as ever. But for the first time, she understood that the frightening thing was not what Market News Network was saying, it was what Obinna still wasn't saying. The invitation did not come from Obinna. That was the first humiliation. Amara learned about the wedding from Market News Network, an institution with no headquarters, no official employees, and apparently better intelligence than most government agencies. Auntie Kemi arrived at the Akara stall holding her phone so tightly that Mama Bisi knew immediately the news was bad. Amara, Mama Bisi looked up. No, Bisi, this is serious. That sentence has never stopped you from enjoying yourself. The Auntie Kemi ignored her and turned the phone toward Amara. There it was, a digital wedding invitation decorated in cream and gold. The Adana, Balogun and Obinna and Dabuosu Amara stared at the screen. For several seconds, she did not understand what she was looking at. Not because the words were difficult, because her mind refused to place them together. Obinna, Adana, wedding, 3 words that should not have belonged in the same sentence. But when Amara finally asked, Auntie Kemi hesitated. Amara looked up. This Saturday? Yes, she laughed. Not because anything was funny. Sometimes pain arrived so suddenly that the body reached for the wrong reaction. Mama Bisi took the phone from Auntie Kemi and examined the invitation. Then she looked at Amara. Did he tell you? No. Did he end the relationship? Amara swallowed. No. That was when Mama Bisi stopped joking. Amara called Obinna. Once, twice, 5 times. He did not answer. She sent one message. Please tell me this is not how I am supposed to find out. The message showed as delivered. Then read, no reply. That hurt more than if he had blocked her, because silence was a choice. Later that evening, Obinna finally called. Amara answered immediately. Is it true? No greeting, no preparation, just the question. Obinna exhaled. Amara, I wanted to talk to you. When things moved very quickly. Weddings don't happen by accident, Obinna. I know. Did you agree to marry her? The silence. Amara closed her eyes. Answer me, yes, 1 word. That was all it took to reduce years of promises into something embarrassingly small. Amara sat on the edge of her bed. Why, Amara, why? Obinna's voice became quieter. You know what this opportunity means? There it was. Not love, not destiny. Opportunity. Chief Balogun believes in me, he continued. He can help me build the kind of career I've worked for all my life. We worked for. Obinna went silent. Amara felt anger rise beneath the pain. We worked for it, Obinna. I studied for that exam. And who paid for it? I never denied that you helped me. He helped you? She almost laughed. I fried akara before sunrise. I made deliveries all afternoon. I cleaned rooms at night. I postponed buying my sewing machine because your registration deadline came first. Amara, I didn't force you. That sentence changed something. She became very still. No, she said quietly. You didn't. Obinna realized too late what he had done. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? I'm saying we were both younger. We made decisions based on what we knew then. That was months ago, not another century. Things are different now. Amara looked at the blue notebook lying on her table. Yes, her voice became calm. They are. Obinna continued talking about pressure, expectations, and the Balogun family. Amara barely heard him. Then she asked, do you love her? He hesitated. That hesitation was the answer. Goodbye, Obinna. Amara, wait. She ended the call. For the first time since they met, she did not wait for him to finish explaining himself. Saturday arrived anyway. The world had the terrible habit of continuing, even when someone desperately wanted it to stop. The Balogun wedding was held inside a lavish hall decorated with enormous flower arrangements, polished tables, and enough gold fabric to make Mama Bisi later remark that even the curtains looked financially successful. Amara had not planned to go. She went to work. That morning she fried akara. Later she completed her deliveries. She told herself the wedding had nothing to do with her. Then, while preparing for her shift at Adarin Guest House, she opened her blue notebook. Her eyes fell on one line. Obinna, exam registry 50 naira. Under it was smaller expenses. Books, transportation, printing. The food. Amara stared at the page. She realized she did not want Obinna back. Not anymore. But there was one thing she could not accept. She could not allow him to rewrite their history so completely that the woman who had stood beside him became an inconvenient rumor. Amara closed the notebook. Then she went to the wedding. She arrived at exactly 7 p.m. The ceremony had ended. Music filled the reception hall, guests were eating, and Obinna stood near the center of the room beside Adana. He looked successful. That was Amara's first thought. Not handsome, not happy, successful. His agbada was beautifully tailored. His shoes gleamed beneath the light. The important-looking men surrounded him, shaking his hand and congratulating him. Adana stood beside him in an elegant wedding dress. Amara looked down at herself. She had come directly from work. Her simple dress carried a faint mark from the guest house cleaning supplies, and the edges of her shoes were dusty. For one terrible second, she understood exactly why Obinna had become embarrassed by her. Then another thought arrived. No, she had nothing to be ashamed of. Every mark on her clothes came from honest work. Amara walked forward. The first person to notice her was Adana. Then Obinna turned. His face changed instantly. Amara? Several guests looked over. She stopped in front of him. You know me after all. They're not here. Where then? Amara, please. No, her voice was not loud. It did not need to be. You wouldn't answer my calls. You wouldn't meet me. So tell me now. Chief Balogun approached. What is going on? The Obinna's shoulders stiffened. Amara looked at him. This was his opportunity. One sentence. That was all she wanted. Not marriage. Not reconciliation. Truth. Tell them who I am. Obinna stared at her. Adana looked from him to Amara. Obinna? Amara held up the blue notebook. Tell your wife who paid 63,450 naira when you couldn't register for your exam. The whispers spread through the nearest tables. Chief Balogun frowned. What is she talking about? Obinna looked around the room. At Chief Balogun, at Adana, at the business associates watching him, at the polished world he had worked so hard to enter. Then he looked at Amara and made his choice. I don't know why she is doing this. Amara froze. The what? Obinna's voice became firmer. She's someone from the market. Someone from the market. She knew me casually. Amara stared at him. Obinna continued because stopping now would require admitting the truth. She helped me with a few things and apparently misunderstood our relationship. Amara's fingers tightened around the notebook. A few things? Adana stepped forward. Obinna, was she your girlfriend? No. The answer came quickly this time. Amara felt as though the entire room had disappeared. Obinna looked directly at her. I barely know her. That was the moment, not the wedding, not Adana, not even the betrayal. That sentence broke something deeper. Amara looked at the man for whom she had delayed her own future. Barely know me? Please leave. Obinna. His jaw tightened. I don't know this woman the way she claims. Someone nearby whispered. Another guest stared openly. Amara could feel the room turning her into a spectacle. Then Obinna said the word she would remember long after the decorations had been taken down. She is practically a stranger. Silence. Amara looked at him. Then something unexpected happened. She stopped crying. Her face became calm. She opened the blue notebook. For a moment, Obinna looked nervous. Amara did not read the expenses aloud. She did not beg anyone to believe her. She simply looked at the page, then at him. You're right about one thing. Obinna frowned. What? I don't know the man standing in front of me either. She closed the notebook. Adana said nothing. But for the first time, uncertainty appeared on her face. Chief Balogun looked at Obinna differently too. Amara turned away. Nobody needed to remove her. She walked out herself. Outside, the evening air hit her face. Her hands were shaking. Her phone immediately began vibrating. Mama Bisi, Amara answered. For several seconds, she could not speak. Amara, Mama, what happened? Amara leaned against the wall. He said he didn't know me. Silence. He called me a stranger. Mama Bisi remained quiet for a moment. Then she asked, where are you? Amara told her, I'm coming. Mama, you don't need. I did not ask whether I needed to. The call ended. Amara sat on a low wall outside the venue and opened the blue notebook again. For the first time, she began adding everything. The exam registration, books, photocopies, transport, food. Small loans Obinna had promised to repay. Then she noticed something else. Between those expenses were several lines she had crossed out over the years. The sewing machine deposit, crossed out. Tailoring course, crossed out. New market stall, crossed out. Amara stared at them. Every time Obinna's future had needed something, hers had moved backward. She had always called that love. Maybe part of it was. But sitting outside the wedding of the man who had just called her a stranger, Amara finally understood something uncomfortable. The problem was not only that Obinna had failed to value her sacrifices. It was that somewhere along the way, she had stopped valuing herself enough to ask what those sacrifices were costing her. Amara wiped her face. Inside the hall, the music started again. She could hear people laughing. The wedding continued, so did life. The Amara closed the notebook and held it against her chest. She did not know what came next. She had no secret fortune waiting for her. The no wealthy stranger was about to appear and solve everything. Tomorrow morning there would still be akara to fry, deliveries to make and rooms to clean. But one thing had changed. For years, almost every important number in that blue notebook had been connected to Obinna's future. Tomorrow, Amara would open a new page, and for the first time, she would write her own name at the top. The next morning, Amara did not go to the market. That happened so rarely that before she had even decided whether she wanted to speak to anyone, her phone already showed 13 missed calls, 6 WhatsApp messages, and a voice note from Auntie Kemi that was almost 4 minutes long. Amara did not open the voice note, not because she did not care, but because 4 minutes from Auntie Kemi could contain enough information for one family to divorce, reconcile, and start arguing again. She turned the phone face down. The room became quiet. The blue notebook sat on the table. The night before, Amara had added up almost everything she had spent on Obinna. Not only the exam registration fee, there were textbooks, photocopies, transportation, meals during the months he studied, and even the white shirt she had bought because he said he needed to look more professional. Individually, the expenses did not seem frightening. Together they did, but the total was not what hurt Amara most. It was the crossed out lines beside them. Sewing machine deposit, tailoring course, new market stall. Every time Obinna needed something, another piece of Amara's future had been moved into the category called later. She had worked incredibly hard. She had simply spent most of that hard work building someone else's life. Amara closed the notebook. Her phone vibrated again. Mama busy. She did not answer. 3 minutes later, someone knocked on the door. Amara knew immediately who it was. No normal person knocked with a rhythm that sounded like a government investigation quite the way Mama BC did. Amara. She pulled the blanket higher. I'm sleeping. You just answered me. Amara closed her eyes. There was silence outside for 2 seconds. So either you're awake or your ability to talk in your sleep is becoming very concerning. Amara finally laughed, very softly. But Mama BC heard it. Good, you're alive. Open the door. Mama BC entered carrying a bag of food, placed it on the table, and looked around the room. There, she did not ask how the wedding had gone. She did not ask what Obinna had said. She did not say that she had warned Amara. That was a greater kindness than Amara had expected. Eat, I'm not hungry. Heartbreak is not a diet plan. The Mama eat, Amara opened the food container. They sat quietly for a while. Eventually, Mama BC noticed the blue notebook. You added it up? Amara stopped eating. Added what? The money. She stared at her. How did you know? The Mama BC shrugged. Women usually do one of 3 things after betrayal. Cry, call someone they should not call, or start calculating. I already did the first 2. Then at least you're making progress. Amara laughed through the tears that had suddenly gathered in her eyes. Then she looked down. Mama, he said he didn't know me. For the first time, her voice broke. He looked straight at me and said I was a stranger. The Mama BC did not make a joke. She simply sat there. Amara wiped her eyes. I didn't need him to stop the wedding. I didn't even go there to take him back. I just wanted him to admit that I had once existed. I know. Was I stupid? Mama BC tilted her head. For loving him? Amara nodded. No. For giving him the money? Perhaps a little too much. Amara laughed despite herself. Mama BC continued. Loving someone does not make you stupid. But if you keep paying the price for someone after they have shown you who they are, then we will need to have a different conversation. The room fell silent again. Mama BC pulled the blue notebook toward herself. How much? Amara told her the total. The Mama BC raised an eyebrow. Don't say it. I haven't said anything. Your face just delivered an entire speech. That is my natural face. Amara leaned back in her chair. Mama BC turned a few pages. Then she asked a very simple question. During all that time, how much did you invest in your own future? Amara opened her mouth, but there was no answer. The Mama BC pointed to the crossed out line about the sewing machine. What is this? I wanted to learn tailoring properly. They want it? Amara looked down. I still do. Then why did you cross it out? Obinna needed the exam fee. The Mama BC turned another page. Tailoring course? He needed books, another page. Market stall? Amara said nothing. For the first time, those crossed out lines no longer looked like noble sacrifices. They looked like a pattern. Obinna had not forced her to do all of it. There had even been times when he told her she did not need to help, But Amara always helped, because she had believed that loving someone well meant giving until the other person no longer lacked anything. She had never asked what would be left for her. Mama, what if he comes back and apologizes? The Mama BC closed the notebook. That is a question for the day he apologizes. She pushed the notebook back toward Amara. There, today you have a different problem. What? You, one word. Enough. Amara returned to the market the following day. There, that was harder than going to the wedding. At the wedding, only a few hundred people had watched her. At the market, there was Auntie Ke. There, those were two completely different levels of danger. The moment Amara appeared, several conversations stopped so quickly that nobody needed evidence to know what the previous topic had been. The Mama BC looked around. Continue talking. Nobody did. Interesting. 5 minutes ago, all of you had the energy of a radio station. Now suddenly there's no signal? A few people laughed awkwardly. Amara walked behind the stall. Auntie Kemi appeared less than 10 minutes later. Amara, I just wanted to say, how much akara would you like, Auntie? Auntie Kemi blinked. I wanted to ask whether you're all right. I will be. I heard what happened at the wedding. Mama BC immediately interrupted. Market News Network is temporarily off the air today. I'm only concerned, then buy akara. Auntie Kemi stared at her. BC and 50 naira, 600. The Mama BC turned toward Amara. See, some things in this world remain stable. Amara laughed, this time genuinely. Days. And strangely, after the laugh, she felt a little lighter. The days that followed were not some beautiful healing montage. Some days, Amara was fine. Other days, she saw a wedding photograph of Obinna on WhatsApp and had to turn off her phone. Some nights, she became angry enough to want to call him just to ask how one person could turn years of shared history into the word stranger so quickly. She never called. Every time she wanted to, she opened the blue notebook, not to look at what she had spent on Obinna anymore. She started a new page. At the top, she wrote Amara. At first, she did not know what to put beneath it. The next day, savings 5,200 naira. 2 days later, savings 8,900 naira. The amounts were almost laughably small, but they belonged to her. Then something happened at Adering Guest House. The manager called Amara into the kitchen because a catering order for a corporate meeting had been cancelled at the last minute. 28 guests were arriving the following morning, and the original supplier could no longer provide breakfast. Do you know anyone who can handle it? The manager asked. Amara thought about Mama BC. Then she thought about all the mornings she had fried hundreds of akara while still remembering exactly which customers did not eat spicy food. Then she thought about the deliveries, the kitchens, the guest rooms, the invoices, 3 jobs. For the first time, she did not see them as 3 burdens. She saw them as 3 skills. Yes, Amara said. The manager sighed with relief. Amara hesitated, then she heard herself answer. The manager stared at her. You? I can prepare breakfast, I know the suppliers, I can organize the delivery. By tomorrow morning? Amara swallowed. She was not certain, but for the first time in years, an opportunity had appeared and the first question in her mind was not, what does Obinna need? She thought about herself. Yes, she said, I can do it. That evening, Amara opened the blue notebook. She did not cross out another dream. Instead, beneath her own name, she wrote a near line, 28 breakfast boxes, Adering Guest House. Then beside it, first order. Amara stared at those 2 words for a long time. She did not have a company. She did not have employees. She did not own a restaurant. She did not even know whether she would make a complete disaster of everything the following morning. But for the first time, the notebook that had recorded everything she had sacrificed for Obinna's future was beginning to record something else. Amara's future. Amara's first catering order began with a small lie. Yes, I can do it. That was what she had told the manager of Edring Guest House when he asked whether she could prepare 28 breakfast boxes. The problem was that Amara had never handled a catering order that large on her own, had no commercial kitchen, no employees, and owned exactly 0 proper food delivery boxes. But she had experience. And sometimes experience was simply the polite name for having survived enough problems to know which one to panic about first. The mother left the guest house and went straight to Mama BC's stall. Mama, I need help. Mama BC was inspecting a bag of beans. She did not look up. How much money? I haven't asked to borrow anything. That made her look up. Oh, she placed the beans down. Then this is more serious than I thought. Amara told her about the order. The 28 breakfasts, akara, pap, eggs, fruit, and drinks, everything had to arrive on time. Mama BC listened carefully, then asked, "How much did you quote?" Amara went silent. Mama BC narrowed her eyes. "Amara, I haven't quoted them yet. Then you don't have a business." She folded her arms. "You have a charity organization wearing an apron." Amara laughed. But Mama BC was right. There, that was lesson number 1. The two women sat down with the blue notebook. This time the numbers were not expenses for Obinna. The beans, oil, eggs, packaging, transportation, cooking gas, labor. Amara calculated the total cost. Then she wrote down the selling price. The Mama BC looked at it. "No, what? How exactly do you intend to make a profit? There's still some money left." "How much?" Amara calculated again. "Enough for a bottle of water." "Excellent. After 6 months in business, you'll be the proud owner of approximately 180 bottles of water." Amara burst out laughing. Mama BC pushed the notebook back toward her. "At the cost of your own labor." But I'm doing the work myself. And are you free?" Amara stopped. The question touched a habit she had never properly noticed. For years, Amara had been very good at calculating the value of everything except herself. She changed the number. This time, Mama BC nodded. Better. Amara looked at the page, a small lesson, but an important one. The morning of the delivery did not unfold like an inspirational movie. There was no scene of Amara standing inside a perfect kitchen, while everything moved effortlessly around her to triumphant background music. The one batch of akara burned. 12 eggs were overcooked. The delivery driver was late. A supplier brought less fruit than promised. And just when Amara thought the morning had exhausted every possible way to insult her, Mama BC looked into the pot of pap and said, "We have a problem." Amara spun around. "What? Not enough? That's impossible. You calculated for 28 people." "Yes, but the guest house just called." The Mama BC raised the phone. 32. Amara stared at her. "I'm going to die." No, Mama BC calmly stirred the pot. But 4 people may have to eat very creatively. Amara covered her face. Then she got to work. She adjusted the portions, called a familiar vendor for additional ingredients, changed the packaging plan, and contacted a driver she trusted to help with the final delivery. By the time the last boxes were loaded onto the vehicle, Amara was sweating so badly that the scarf around her head looked ready to submit its own resignation letter. But the order left on time. Near midday, the guest house manager called. Amara answered with the emotional state of someone awaiting a court verdict. The guests liked the food. She froze. "Really? Especially the akara." One of them asked whether we could order from you again for next week's meeting. Amara sat down on the nearest chair. Mama BC looked at her. Amara raised her thumb. Mama BC immediately turned toward a customer. "I knew it." Amara covered the phone. "Mama, 5 minutes ago, you said 4 people might starve. I said they might have to eat creatively." The Mama BC adjusted her headscarf. "Do not rewrite history. The second order led to a third, not quickly. Not magically, but genuinely. An employee at the guest house recommended Amara to her sister's office. Another guest asked whether she catered birthday parties. A women's community group ordered 40 lunch boxes for a meeting. For a while, Amara continued working all 3 of her old jobs. But the way she saw them began to change. The mornings at the market had taught her how to buy ingredients at the right price and remember what customers liked. The delivery work taught her which roads became congested, which drivers could be trusted, and why the phrase "I'll be there in 5 minutes" in Nigeria should sometimes be treated more like a philosophical concept than a measurement of time. Her job at the guest house taught her something else. Customers did not pay only for food. They paid for punctuality, cleanliness, and the feeling that they did not have to worry. The 3 jobs had once exhausted Amara. Now she began to see them as 3 classrooms she had accidentally attended. Her first large family event almost became a disaster. Amara quoted too little. The client changed the guest count twice. One relative of the host kept entering the preparation area to ask why the piece of meat on her table looked smaller than the one served at another table. The 4th time she returned, Amara smiled politely. "Ma'am, they were cut to the same size." The woman pointed toward another plate. "That one looks bigger." Amara looked. "Perhaps it is more confident." The woman went silent. One of Amara's assistants turned away to hide her laughter. That evening, Amara checked the numbers. She had made almost no profit. She was disappointed enough to consider giving up. But this time, instead of crossing out the plan, she opened the blue notebook and wrote, Mistake, no guest count changes after final confirmation without additional charges. The next mistake, forgot to include extra transportation costs. Then, mistake, the meat does not have a self-esteem problem, the customer might. Amara stared at the last line. Then she laughed alone. The notebook was changing, so was she. After some time, Amara gradually reduced her delivery work. B, not because she was rich, because catering had begun earning enough for her to buy back some of her own time. That was a kind of wealth she had never considered before. She hired 2 women to help whenever she received larger orders. B, one was Tola, who worked quickly but frequently forgot to write down quantities. The others was Funke, whose records were flawless but who chopped onions at a speed that once caused Mama Busy to announce, "We have 2 choices. D, finish this order today or wait for the onions to die of old age." Funke laughed so hard she nearly cut the onion crooked. Amara began learning how to manage people. That was harder than doing everything herself. Before, when something went wrong, her solution had always been to work harder. And now she had to explain, delegate, trust, and say no, especially no. One customer asked for almost a third of the price because we'll introduce you to many people. Amara almost agreed. The old habit appeared immediately. Sacrifice first. Hope to be appreciated later. She looked at the blue notebook. They then answered, "Thank you, but this is our price." The customer went silent. Amara could feel her heartbeat quicken. "Then I'll find someone else." "As I understand." The call ended. Amara sat very still. Part of her wanted to call back immediately. Mama Bisi was nearby sorting vegetables. I didn't say anything, but your face is preparing a discount." Amara laughed. She did not call. 2 days later, the customer returned and accepted the original price. Amara did not celebrate dramatically. She simply opened the notebook and recorded the order. Beside the amount, she wrote 2 words: hold value. Not only the price, her value. Throughout all of this, Obinna almost disappeared from Amara's direct life, but he still existed on other people's phones. D, wedding photographs, parties, congratulations. A picture of Obinna and Adana standing beside Chief Balogun at a business event. At first, Amara immediately turned off the screen whenever she saw one. But gradually, she no longer needed to. One afternoon, Auntie Kemi approached the stall. "Amara, have you heard about?" Mama Bisi immediately raised her head. "No, I haven't even said anyone's name, but your slippers are standing in a gossip position." Auntie Kemi looked down at her feet. "What do my slippers have to do with anything? They know." Amara burst out laughing. Auntie Kemi laughed too. And she did not tell the story about Obinna. It was a small change, but Amara appreciated it. At the end of one busy day, Amara sat alone reviewing her accounts. Then she turned back to the old pages. Obinna exam registration, 63,450 naira. She paused. That line used to make her angry. And now it only made her a little sad. Amara turned to the newer pages, 28 breakfast boxes, 40 lunch packs. The first office contract, second assistant, equipment deposit. For the first time, she had saved enough to buy a small commercial cooker. Underneath it, Amara wrote, business name registration. She stopped. A name. She needed a name. After several minutes, Amara wrote, 3 Rods Kitchen. D, 3 roads, 3 jobs, 3 places she had once rushed between every day just to keep another person's dream alive. And now all 3 roads led somewhere else, back to her. Amara looked at the words and smiled. Her phone vibrated. D, a new email from Adrin Guest House. A company was organizing a major corporate conference and had asked for a list of reliable catering providers. D, the guest house had recommended 3 Roads Kitchen. Amara opened the attached document. She read the name of the organizing body. Her smile slowly disappeared. Balogun Development Council. Amara stared at the name for a long moment. Then she looked at the blue notebook. Once, simply seeing the name Balogun would have made her think of Obinna. This time, her first thought was completely different. How many meals do they need a quote for? If social media was the only evidence available, anyone would have believed that Obinna and Adana were living inside a marriage designed by a professional team whose sole purpose was to make single people question every decision they had ever made. Anniversary photographs, party photographs, photographs beside expensive cars, pictures of Adana in elegant dresses, with Obinna standing beside her wearing the smile of a man who appeared never to have worried about whether he had enough money for the bus ride home. The comments were always the same. Beautiful couple, power couple, God bless your home. Nobody posted photographs of silence, and lately the Balogun household had plenty of that. The one weekday evening, Adana sat at the dining table inside the home. Her father had helped the couple rent after their wedding. The 2 plates of food sat almost untouched in front of her. Obinna walked in, removed his watch, and placed his phone on the table. There, you haven't eaten. I was waiting for you. I told you the meeting ran late. You told me after the meeting had already been running late for an hour. The Obinna pulled out a chair. Adana, I'm tired, so am I. He looked at her, neither said anything else. 6 months earlier, a silence like this might have ended with a joke or an apology. Now it usually ended with a phone. The Obinna picked his up. Adana watched him. Do you ever put that thing down? I'm checking my email. Of course. What is that supposed to mean? Nothing. That was one of the most dangerous words in marriage. It almost always meant many things. Their problems had not started because of money. Chief Balogun was still wealthy. Adana still had a good career. Obinna was building his own career faster than most of the people who had taken the exam with him. The problem was that Adana had begun noticing a pattern. Obinna changed his story depending on the room. At one networking event, she heard him say, I built myself from nothing. At another dinner, nobody ever gave me anything. The first time, Adana ignored it. The second time, she remembered the woman in the blue dress who had appeared at their wedding. The 63,450 naira. The number was strange enough to be unforgettable. Someone could easily invent. I helped him a lot, but 63,450 naira? That sounded like a receipt. And receipts rarely cared about protecting anyone's reputation. One evening, after Obinna once again told his self-made story in front of 2 of her father's guests, Adana waited until they had left. Then she asked, did you really do everything alone? Obinna was unbuttoning his cuff. What do you mean? You know what I mean? No, I don't, Amara. His hand stopped, only for a moment, but Adana saw it. We've already discussed this. No, she folded her arms. You told me she was some woman from the market who became obsessed with you. That wasn't a discussion. That was an explanation because it was the truth. She knew the exact amount of your exam registration fee. Obinna turned toward her. Adana, why are we digging this up again? Because every time you tell the story of your past, it becomes a little cleaner. His expression hardened. Are you accusing me of lying? I'm asking why a man who claims nobody ever helped him had a woman appear at his wedding with the exact amount she paid for his exam. The Obinna laughed dryly. So you believe her over your husband? I'm trying to understand my husband. That silenced him. Adana looked directly at him. Was she your girlfriend? That ended a long time ago. Not an answer. The Adana noticed immediately. I asked whether she had ever been your girlfriend. Obinna looked away. Yes, one word. The room suddenly felt very quiet. Adana sat down, not because she was jealous, because the memory of her wedding had just changed completely. So you knew her. Of course I knew her. You told everyone at our wedding that you barely knew her. I was trying to stop her from ruining the ceremony. Adana stared at him. By erasing her from your past, things were complicated. Maybe, she nodded slowly. But I'm beginning to understand you. Obinna did not like that sentence. While their marriage developed cracks that Instagram could not photograph, Three Roads Kitchen had a completely different problem. They had too many orders. The Amara had once believed this was the kind of problem only successful people were allowed to complain about. She had been wrong. Too many orders meant not enough cooking space, not enough staff, not enough containers, not enough time, and for reasons Amara could never fully explain. Somehow, never enough onions, even though she was certain she had just bought onions. The Tola entered the preparation area carrying a sheet of paper. Amara, Saturday's order has added 15 people. Amara did not look up. They already confirmed the guest count. They said it's only extra family. Did their family reproduce in 3 days? The Funke laughed from the other side of the kitchen. Tola tried to keep a straight face. They want to know if we can keep the same price. The Amara finally looked up. The old habit whispered, just agree, don't upset the customer. She looked at the cost sheet. Then she remembered Mama Busy, a charity organization wearing an apron. Send them a revised quotation. Are you sure? Yes. Tola nodded. Amara returned to the ingredient list. This was how she was changing, not through some grand speech. But through small notes she once would have been afraid to say. The email from Balogun Development Council was still sitting in Amara's inbox. They needed catering for a 2-day business conference. 180 guests. It would be the largest contract Three Roads Kitchen had ever handled. The Tola nearly screamed when she saw the estimated budget. We have to take this. Funke immediately asked, Balogun, as in that Balogun. The kitchen became quiet. By then, nearly everyone in town knew some version of the story. Market News Network never deleted its archives. Amara looked at the email. She could refuse. Nobody would blame her. Part of her wanted to refuse simply because she did not want to walk into another room where Obinna might be. Then she looked at the Three Roads Kitchen logo on the quotation sheet. This was not Obinna's job. It was not Obinna's wedding. It was not Obinna's past. This was a client asking to hire her company. We are submitting a proposal, Amara said. The Funke studied her face. Are you okay? I don't know. Amara smiled slightly, but the proposal still has to be submitted. The Tola nodded. That's the spirit. Mama Bisi, who was sitting in the corner sorting vegetables despite not being invited to the business meeting, immediately interrupted. The forget spirit. Check the price of cooking oil first. Nobody argued. Business had very clear priorities. Three Roads Kitchen submitted the proposal. 2 days later, Balogun Development Council requested a tasting session. Amara designed the menu herself. She did not try to impress them with unnecessarily complicated dishes. She chose food she understood. Mini akara with mild pepper sauce, jollof rice, grilled chicken, vegetables, a simple dessert, foods that had once belonged to her working life. Now they were being presented as part of a business. Obinna was not at the tasting, Adana was. When she entered the room, Amara felt her entire body tense. The two women looked at each other. The last time they had stood face to face was at the wedding. Adana spoke first. Amara, Mrs. Nwosu, Adana hesitated slightly at the formality. You run Three Roads Kitchen? Yes, I didn't know. Amara gave a faint smile. There are many things we don't know about each other. The sentence was not sharp. But Adana understood. She nodded. Neither woman mentioned Obinna. They discussed the menu, guest numbers, dietary restrictions, delivery windows, staffing. Adana asked detailed questions. Amara answered each one professionally. After the tasting, Chief Balogun entered. He tried one piece of akara. Then another. If Mama Bisi had been present, she probably would have declared the second piece an official government endorsement. The Chief Balogun wiped his hands. Where did you train? Amara thought for a moment. Many places. What school? Not a school, she smiled. The market, delivery work, a guest house, and quite a lot of mistakes. Chief Balogun laughed. Good. He looked down at her proposal. Someone who knows where she has made mistakes is often more trustworthy than someone who claims never to have made any. Adana looked at her father, then at Amara. The sentence made her think of Obinna. At the end of the tasting, Amara began gathering her documents. Adana remained behind. Amara? She turned. Adana took several seconds before asking, at the wedding you were telling the truth, weren't you? There was no need to ask what truth she meant. Amara looked at her. What exactly do you want to know? Is he your boyfriend? You paid his exam fee? Yes. Adana inhaled slowly. He told me you are only someone he knew. Amara remained silent. Then she said, that is between you and your husband. There was no victory in her voice. No pleasure in Adana's pain. And somehow that made Adana more uncomfortable than mockery would have. You don't hate me? Amara thought about it. There was a time when I wanted to. Adana looked at her. And now? Now I think you married a man I once knew very well. Silence. Maybe you should decide for yourself how well you know him. Amara picked up her bag. Then she walked away. 3 days later, Three Roads Kitchen received an email. Proposal The Tola screamed loudly enough that Funke dropped the spoon. Mama Bisi raised both hands. Good Lord, we won a contract, not the lottery. This is our biggest contract. Then stop screaming and start checking the price of onions. Amara laughed. Then she read the final paragraph of the email. Balogun Development Council wanted a formal meeting with the project team before the final contract was signed. The attendee list was attached. Amara read the names one by one. Chief Adebayo Balogun, Adana Nwosu, 2 event managers. Then the final name. Obinna Nwosu, Strategic Partnerships Consultant. Tola noticed the change in Amara's expression. Amara locked the screen. I'm fine. This time it was not entirely a lie. She walked to the table, opened the blue notebook, and looked at the first page she had created for Three Roads Kitchen. The 28 breakfast boxes. Then she turned back to an older page. Obinna, exam registration, 63,450 naira. 2 lines, 2 versions of the same woman. Once Amara had walked into Obinna's world to ask whether he would acknowledge who she was. This time, she would walk into the Balogun family's conference room because they needed her company. The difference looked small on paper. Inside Amara, it was the size of an entire life. She closed the blue notebook. Tomorrow, Obinna would see the woman he had once called a stranger. Only this time, Amara was not coming to ask him who she was. There, she already knew. On the morning of the meeting with the Balogun Development Council, Amara changed her outfit 3 times. Not because she wanted to impress Obinna. At least, that was what she told herself. The first outfit looked too formal. The second made her feel as though she was trying too hard to prove something. In the end, Amara chose a fitted emerald Ankara dress, simple low heels, and a pair of small earrings Mama Bisi had once described as pretty enough to make people notice you instead of wondering about your bank account. Amara still was not sure whether that had been a compliment. With Mama Bisi, the line was often dangerously thin. She packed her laptop, quotation documents, and blue notebook into her bag. Tola stood near the door. "Do you want me to come with you?" The yes Tola immediately picked up her bag. "But I won't say anything." Amara looked at her. "Why?" "I heard people aren't supposed to talk too much in important meetings." "Who told you that?" "Mama Bisi." From the kitchen, Mama Bisi's voice rang out. "I said you shouldn't talk too much." Tola turned around. "Is there a difference?" "A very large one." Amara laughed. The tension in her chest loosened slightly. That was one 3 Roads Kitchen had given her besides money. People who stood beside her, not to rescue her, simply so she did not have to stand alone. The Balogun Development Council conference room was located high inside a modern office building in Bodija. Huge glass windows overlooked the busy roads below, where vehicles squeezed around one another as though traffic lanes were merely polite suggestions rather than actual rules. The Amara arrived early. She always arrived early. Years of delivery work had taught her that traffic might be a perfectly reasonable explanation, but it was completely useless to a customer waiting for food. The Adana was already there. The 2 women greeted each other with a polite nod. Chief Balogun entered shortly afterward with 2 event managers. The Miss Adeyemi. He shook Amara's hand. "We received excellent feedback from the tasting. Thank you, sir. Can your team handle 180 guests over 2 days?" Yes, no hesitation, no boasting. Amara opened her proposal. "We've divided production into 3 teams. Ingredients will be prepared in 2 stages, and we have a contingency plan if attendance increases by up to 10%. The one manager asked, "Transportation?" 2 separate deliveries. Hot and cold items will travel separately. Staff, 11 people on the first day. 13 if the evening program is confirmed. Chief Balogun nodded. "You've prepared thoroughly." Amara smiled. "I learned that if you don't prepare for problems, problems have a habit of preparing themselves." The Chief Balogun laughed. Adana did too. Then the door opened. Obinna walked in. He was looking at his phone. "Sorry, the call took longer than." He looked up. The sentence died in his throat. Amara looked at him. Obinna stared back. Nobody else in the room knew that those few seconds contained an Akara stall before sunrise, an exam registration fee, a sewing machine that had never been purchased, and a wedding where one man had decided his past would look better if he erased a woman from it. The Chief Balogun spoke first. "Obinna, you know Miss Adeyemi, don't you?" The question was almost too perfect. Adana looked at her husband. Amara said nothing. A similar question had been asked at the wedding. "Do you know her?" Back then, Amara had waited for Obinna to decide who she was. This time, she simply opened her laptop. Obinna pulled out a chair. Yes, his voice was quieter than usual. "We used to know each other." Amara looked up, not stranger. Remarkable progress. Apparently, some people required a conference rooms, a business contract, and several years before their memory returned. The excellent Chief Balogun said, completely unaware of the meaning underneath the exchange. "Then working together should be easier." Adana said nothing. But her expression said enough. The meeting continued, and that was precisely what seemed to make Obinna most uncomfortable. Amara did not question him. She did not keep looking at him to see his reaction. She did not try to prove how much she had changed. She talked about logistics, menus, staffing, costs, cancellation policies. One of the managers suggested reducing the budget because the council could bring 3 Roads Kitchen many future opportunities. Amara listened carefully. Years ago, she probably would have reduced the price immediately. Work more, accept less. Hope they remember the sacrifice later. She had already tried that business model once. The results had been terrible. We appreciate the possibility of a long-term partnership, Amara said, but our current price accurately reflects the cost and quality of the service. The manager frowned slightly. There's no flexibility? There is. Amara turned to another page. We can adjust the menu or reduce the number of service staff. But I won't keep the same scope of work and lower the price by cutting my team's wages. Chief Balogun looked at her, then nodded. Fair. Obinna leaned back in his chair. He remembered another Amara, the woman who used to say, "It's fine. I'll handle it. You just study. My money is for our future too." The woman sitting across from him was still kind. She had simply stopped confusing kindness with erasing herself. After nearly an hour, both sides agreed on the main terms. The Chief Balogun stood. We'll have the legal department finalize the contract. He shook Amara's hand. I look forward to working with Three Roads Kitchen. So do we. Tola tried to maintain her professional expression. She succeeded until Chief Balogun turned away. Then she looked at Amara with enormous eyes and whispered, "We did it." Amara gently nudged her. "Wait until we're outside before you scream." Tola nodded. "Can I scream in the elevator?" "No, the hallway. No parking lot. Negotiable." Tola smiled and left with the two managers. The Chief Balogun received a phone call and stepped out. Adana gathered her papers. Obinna remained seated. Amara closed her laptop. Amara. She stopped. Adana looked at her husband, then at Amara. "I'll wait outside." She left. For the first time since the wedding, Amara and Obinna were alone in the same room. Obinna stood. "You look well." Amara almost laughed. Of all the sentences available to him, that was the one he had managed to find. "Thank you. I heard about Three Roads Kitchen." "Now you have. That's not what I meant." Amara picked up her bag. "Then, what did you mean?" Obinna fell silent. He studied her as though trying to find the woman he remembered beneath the person standing before him. "I didn't know you had built all this." Amara tilted her head. "You never asked." The answer left him with nothing to say. He stepped slightly closer. "Amara, about the wedding, you don't need to. I want to explain. You explained yourself that day." No. Obinna shook his head. "I panicked. You called me a stranger." "I know, in front of the woman you were marrying." "I know after I paid your exam fee." Obinna lowered his eyes. "I know." Amara looked at him. The strange thing was that she had once imagined this moment would feel like victory. She had thought Obinna would one day see her successful, and she would experience some enormous sense of satisfaction. But now he was standing in front of her, and Amara only felt tired for the woman she used to be. "I was afraid," Obinna said. "I know." He looked up. "You know, you were afraid they would find out you had once been poor." "It wasn't only that. You were afraid they would know you needed me." Obinna said nothing. Amara continued. "You weren't ashamed because I sold Akara." She looked directly into his eyes. "You were ashamed because I was proof that you didn't build yourself alone." The words hit exactly where he had spent years trying not to look. Obinna pulled out a chair and sat down. For once, he did not have a quick answer. "I told everyone I made it on my own," he said eventually. "I know. At first, I just wanted them to respect me." Amara remained silent. Then the more people believed that story, the harder it became to tell the truth. "What truth?" "That someone helped me." No. Amara shook her head. "Not someone." Obinna looked at her. "Give me one word," like Mama Bisi had once said. Sometimes one word was enough. Obinna lowered his head. "You?" Amara felt the pain. But it was different now. It was no longer an open wound. It felt more like touching an old scar. It reminded her what had happened. It no longer decided where she had to go. Obinna looked at her bag. The part of the blue notebook was visible. He recognized it immediately. "You still have that?" Amara pulled it out. "Yes." Obinna smiled sadly. "You used to write everything in there." "I still do." "Do you still have my exam fee written down?" "Yes." He closed his eyes. She opened the notebook. Obinna saw the old line. "Obinna, exam registration 63,450 naira." Then Amara turned the pages. First order, equipment deposit, second assistant, Three Roads Kitchen registration, corporate contract. Obinna stared at the pages. He said nothing. Once, Amara said, "This notebook was almost entirely a record of everything I gave up to help you move forward." She closed it. "Now it records what I'm building." Obinna looked at her. "I'm sorry." It was the first time Amara had heard him say those words without attaching an explanation. "No, but I was under pressure." "No, but you don't understand. Only I'm sorry," she nodded. "I heard you, that's all?" Amara looked at him. "What else do you want?" Obinna did not answer immediately. Then he said, "I don't know." At least that was honest. Amara walked toward the door. Amara! She turned. Obinna stood there, somehow looking much smaller than the man who had once stood in the middle of a wedding hall and decided she did not exist. I still think about those years. So do I. We have history. Amara looked at him. That was the sentence he had chosen. We have history. She almost smiled. Interesting. Obinna frowned. What? At the wedding I was a stranger. She placed her hand on the door handle. Now suddenly we have history. He had no answer. Amara did not need a sharper final line. She did not need to protect herself with cruelty either. As she opened the door, before leaving, she turned back. History is not an invitation, Obinna. Then she walked away. Adana stood at the far end of the hallway. She had not heard the entire conversation, but she had seen her husband's face when Amara stepped out. Are you okay? Adana asked. Amara nodded. I'm fine. Adana looked toward the conference room. Did he apologize? Yes. Have you forgiven him? Amara thought about it. Maybe one day. Adana looked surprised. After everything? Amara met her eyes. Forgiveness and reopening the door are two different things. Adana fell silent. The sentence was not only meant for Amara. Both women knew it. Amara walked toward the elevator. Tola was waiting there, making a suspiciously serious effort not to ask questions. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. Tola waited exactly 3 seconds. Am I allowed to ask? No. Okay. The 1 second passed. Did he cry? Amara looked at her. Tola, I'm only collecting data. Amara burst out laughing. You've spent too much time around Mama BC. It's professional training. The elevator doors closed. Back inside the conference room, Adana entered. The Obinna was still standing beside the table. She looked at him. She was telling the truth. It was not a question. The Obinna nodded. Yes, all of it? Almost. Adana inhaled slowly. So you let me stand at my own wedding believing she was some strange woman who had come to cause trouble? The Obinna did not answer. Adana laughed. There was no humor in it. Do you know the funniest part, Adana? I thought our problem was Amara. She shook her head. But she was never the problem. Obinna looked at his wife. Adana picked up her bag. The problem is that I don't know whether I married the real man or the version of himself he created for whatever room he happened to be standing in. She walked out. Obinna remained alone. This time there was no market news network, no wedding guests, no Amara to blame. Only the story he had created about himself, and the real man standing inside it. In the parking lot, Tola was finally permitted to scream. She kept her promise. We got the contract! A man nearby jumped and dropped his keys. Amara covered her face. Tola, you said the parking lot was okay. I said it was negotiable. I thought that meant yes. Amara laughed so hard she had to lean against the car. Her phone vibrated. Mama BC. Amara answered. How did it go? We got the contract. There was silence on the other end. Then Mama BC said, good. Amara waited. That's it? Do you want me to scream like Tola? Amara looked at Tola. How did you know? I know that girl. A pause. Then Mama BC asked, and the scholar? Amara looked up at the building. He remembers me now. Oh, Mama BC sounded thoroughly unimpressed. His memory has returned. Amara laughed, apparently. The success is miraculous. Mama, I am merely making a social observation. Amara shook her head. They ended the call. She opened her bag and touched the blue notebook. Once, Amara had imagined that perfect justice would mean Obinna needing her one day, so she could look him directly in the eyes and say, I don't know you. But when that moment almost arrived, she realized she did not want to become a version of the person who had hurt her. She did not need to turn Obinna into a stranger. He was part of her past. He simply was not part of her future. Amara climbed into the car with Tola. Behind them, the Balogun building became smaller in the mirror. For the first time, she left a room with Obinna still inside it without wondering what he thought of her. And perhaps that was the real reversal no luxurious photograph could ever capture. The woman who once needed Obinna to acknowledge her no longer needed him to define her at all. The contract with the Balogun Development Council did not turn Amara into a wealthy woman overnight. No luxury car suddenly appeared outside her home. No mansion dropped out of the sky, and 3 Roads Kitchen's bank account certainly did not wake up the next morning and add several zeros simply because its owner had just experienced a very cinematic moment with her ex-boyfriend. The reality was far less glamorous. Amara had to work, a lot, and she preferred it that way. On the first morning of the conference, the Three Roads kitchen workspace was already operating like an emergency meeting in which onions, cooking oil, and thyme had all declared war on the government. Tola, where's the chicken for table 6? Coming. Funke, we're 8 salads short. We're not. I just counted them. You counted the trays on the left. Amara turned. There was another set of trays on the right. Then she looked at Funke. Funke looked back at her. All right, Amara said. You win today. From the other end of the preparation table, Mama BC spoke. Don't declare victory too early. The delivery vehicle still isn't here. Amara checked the time. Her smile disappeared. Tola. I already called him. What did he say? Tola looked at her phone. He said he's on his way. The entire kitchen went silent. Mama BC shook her head. The most dangerous sentence in the transportation industry. Everyone laughed. Amara laughed too. Then she called the backup driver. That was one of the differences between the old Amara and the woman she had become. Once she believed working hard meant carrying everything by herself. Now she understood that being professional meant preparing for the moment when someone else disappointed you. The conference went better than expected. All 180 guests were served on time. No meals were missing. The no trays arrived late. One guest even requested a Three Roads kitchen business card for an upcoming company event. Tola recorded the contact information. Funke checked the buffet. Amara moved between the service area and the preparation room, watching everything without constantly jumping in to do everyone else's job. She had learned how to build a team. Obinna had never taught her that. Heartbreak had not taught her either. The work had, mistakes had, the underpriced orders, the burned batches of Akara, the customers who wanted 15 extra guests without paying 15 extra guests money, and the evening she had spent alone with the blue notebook had taught. Near the end of the event, Chief Balogun approached her. Miss Adiemi, sir, excellent work. Thank you. Your team is very good. Amara smiled. I'm fortunate to have them. Chief Balogun shook his head. Skilled people can be hired. He glanced around the service area. But making them want to do good work with you is something else. That compliment pleased Amara more than she expected, because it had nothing to do with Obinna, nothing to do with being with abandon, nothing to do with revenge. It was about something she had built. Adana appeared as the conference was ending. She looked tired. Not the kind of tired caused by a lack of sleep, the kind that came from spending days reconsidering things you once believed were true. Amara, do you have a minute? Amara handed the inventory check to Tola and stepped into a quieter part of the hallway. What happened? Adana was silent for a moment. Obinna and I are living separately. Amara did not know how she was supposed to react. Eventually, she said, I'm sorry. Adana studied her face almost as if checking for sarcasm. There was none. You're not happy? Why would I be? After what he did to you? Amara leaned lightly against the table. I used to think that if your marriage failed, I would feel like justice had been served. And now I think your marriage isn't supposed to be either my reward or my punishment. Adana looked down. He told me he apologized to you. Yes. Did you forgive him? Amara thought about it. I don't wake up anymore wishing he could feel the pain I once felt. She paused. Maybe that's one form of forgiveness. But you wouldn't take him back. Amara gave a small laugh. No, that's certain. Forgiveness is not a buy one get one free promotion. Adana unexpectedly laughed. Amara laughed too. Some of the tension between them disappeared. You're different from what I thought, Adana said. So are you? Adana raised an eyebrow. What did you think of me? Honestly? I thought you were an arrogant rich chief's daughter who stole another woman's boyfriend and then stood at her wedding watching that woman be humiliated. Adana winced. That's terrible, you asked. Amara looked at her. Now I think someone told you an incomplete story too. Adana fell silent. For the first time, Obinna was no longer standing between them. They were simply two women who had been given two different versions of the truth by the same man. Over the following months, Three Roads Kitchen continued to grow steadily. Not magically, Amara took out a small business loan to rent a larger kitchen. She hired more workers, purchased better equipment, and eventually left her job at Adering Guest House. On the day she returned her employee card, the manager shook her hand. Don't forget this place when you become rich. Amara smiled. I don't intend to become rich enough to lose my memory. The words had barely left her mouth when she thought of Obinna. But this time, the memory did not hurt. It only made her understand something. Money did not make people forget. Status did not either. They simply gave people the opportunity to decide which parts of their past were convenient to remember. And which parts were convenient to erase. One afternoon, Mama BC walked into the new kitchen. She stood among the stainless steel tables, commercial refrigerators, and neatly labeled shelves of ingredients. Amara folded her arms. Only Mama BC walked around. I'm inspect. Since when are you an inspector? Since you started making enough money to make more expensive mistakes. Amara laughed. Mama BC opened a cabinet. Then she noticed it. In one corner stood an industrial sewing machine. She turned around. What is that doing in the kitchen? Amara smiled. It's not for the kitchen. I should hope not. If you start sewing chickens, I'm resigning. The Amara burst out laughing. She walked over to the machine. It was not the exact sewing machine she had wanted years ago. It was close. I bought it for myself. Mama BC fell silent. Amara gently ran her hand across the table. I still want to learn tailoring. Do you have time? Not much, then why buy it? Amara looked at her. There, to remind myself that one dream doesn't have to be crossed out just because I'm building another. Mama BC did not joke. She simply nodded. Keep it 2 words, but Amara understood. Obinna appeared one more time, not at the kitchen, not at some glamorous event. He went back to the old stall at Akinyele Market. Mama BC was selling food. The scholar who had once dreamed of becoming an important man stood before her in a simple shirt, without Chief Balogun, without business cards, and without a room full of people he needed to impress. The Mama BC looked at him. Akara? Obinna seemed slightly surprised. Yes, how much? See 50 naira. She packed the order. Obinna paid. Then he asked, is Amara here? Mama BC looked at him. She has a business. I know. Then why are you looking for her here? Obinna smiled sadly. I don't know. Mama BC handed him the bag. Then maybe your memory brought you back. He accepted it. You still don't like me. No, she sat down. But I don't hate you either. Obinna looked at her. Is there a difference? A very large one. She pointed to a chair. Obinna sat. After a moment, he said, I ruined a lot of things, yes. He seemed to wait for more. Mama BC gave him nothing. You're not going to comfort me? You bought 650 naira worth of akara, not therapy. Obinna laughed. Perhaps for the first time in a long while, he laughed at himself. Adana and I are getting divorced. The Mama BC nodded. I heard Market News Network. She looked offended. How many times must I tell you? There, I do not gossip. Obinna smiled. Of course, he looked around the market. I used to hate this place. Why? Because it reminded me that I used to be poor. Mama BC watched him. And now? Obinna looked at the bag of akara in his hands. Now, I think I hated it because this place knew me before I learned how to tell a prettier version of myself. The Mama BC did not respond immediately. So what have you learned? Obinna thought. Never be ashamed of the person who stood beside you when you had nothing. The Mama BC shook her head. Not enough. He looked at her. Then what? Don't respect people only because they helped you. She leaned forward. Respect them because they are human beings. Obinna fell silent. This time he did not argue. That evening, Amara sat in the small office behind Three Roads Kitchen. The blue notebook was on the desk. It was old now. The corners of the cover had curled. A few pages carried cooking oil stains. Amara turned to an old entry, industrial sewing machine deposit. Crossed out. Directly registration, 63,450 naira. She picked up her pen. She did not erase the entry. She did not cross anything else out. She simply turned to the final page. There she wrote, industrial sewing machine purchased. Amara looked at the words, then added another line, not everything delayed is lost. She closed the notebook. Outside the office, Tola and Funke were arguing over who had forgotten to order more food containers. The Mama BC was talking louder than both of them, despite officially not being an employee. Amara's phone lit up with an email requesting a quotation for another contract. The life continued. Not perfectly, not magically, but it belonged to her. Once Amara had worked 3 jobs to help a man pass his exams. She had believed the reward for that sacrifice was supposed to be marriage. She had been wrong. The reward was not Obinna. It was not even Three Roads Kitchen. The reward was the woman Amara finally learned to become when she stopped placing her entire worth in whether another person chose her. The Obinna had once called her a stranger. But the story did not end with Amara throwing the same word back at him. It ended with something better. She was no longer a stranger to herself. 1 year later, Three Roads Kitchen was no longer the tiny kitchen where every food container had to be carefully counted. The Amara now had her own team, steady contracts, and still spent a few hours every weekend learning to sew simply because it was a dream she had postponed for far too long. The one afternoon, Mama BC walked in, glanced at the sewing machine, and declared, "Good, you finally started investing in the woman who deserves it most." The Amara burst out laughing. Somewhere outside, Market News Network was undoubtedly still busy doing what it did best, but this time Amara didn't need to know what people were saying about her. She finally had a story of her own.